Before the wolves move, the ground beneath them is already alive. Across the Yellowstone Plateau, water descends through fractured volcanic rock, meets heat rising from deep below, and returns as boiling springs, mud pots, rivers of steam, and mineral terraces. This is not merely the setting for Yellowstone wildlife. It is an active force, opening water in frozen valleys, concealing prey behind fog, warming exposed ground, and turning familiar hunting routes into unstable terrain. Into this restless landscape, a grey wolf pack begins its daily journey. They will cross forests shaped by fire, test bison herds protected by mass, follow elk through mineral flats, and wait beneath lodgepole pines when heat makes movement too costly. Every decision will be influenced by temperature, wind, water, and the volcanic architecture beneath their paws. Around them, ravens follow opportunity, beavers reshape rivers, and microscopic organisms survive where most complex life cannot. Each belongs to the same system, connected by hunger, energy, and adaptation. Here, predators do not command the landscape. They negotiate with it. This is a world where the earth hunts alongside the wolves, and sometimes chooses which animal escapes. The greater Yellowstone ecosystem is still locked in darkness, yet the ground beneath it has never been still. Rain and snowmelt descend through fractures in ancient rhyolite, where heat from Yellowstone's volcanic system warms groundwater far beyond the surface boiling point. Because the plateau stands at high elevation, water boils here at roughly 92 degrees Celsius. But underground pressure allows it to remain liquid at even higher temperatures before it rises through more than 10,000 hydrothermal features. Within this shifting veil, a pack of grey wolves awakens. An adult male rises first, moisture gathering along the guard hairs of his winter coat, while dense underfur preserves warm air close to the skin. He lifts his muzzle and samples a world he can barely see. At his feet, a paw print lies pressed into grey geothermal mud. A drop of condensation falls from a lodgepole pine needle and lands inside it, while green microbial growth follows the warm runoff along the edge. For a few seconds, the track of a large predator becomes a tiny basin where heat, water, and life meet. Dark forms materialize ahead. American bison stand near the thermal pools, their breath merging with the steam. The wolves slow, because a healthy bison is built around mass, muscle, and group defense. Bison may feed for 9 to 11 hours a day, then regurgitate and re-chew plant material so microorganisms in their multi-chambered stomach can convert cellulose into usable energy. The pack circles at a distance, searching for isolation or weakness, but the herd stays compact. Wolves need about 3.25 kilograms of food per animal per day, and can consume 15 to 20% of their body weight in one meal. Yet that hunger does not justify a shattered limb. The calculation ends before the chase begins. At the forest boundary, a solitary moose strips bark from a fallen tree. Greater Yellowstone moose rely heavily on mature spruce and fir forests during winter. The animal draws bark between its mobile upper lip and lower incisors, exposing softer cambium beneath, while the wolves slip past unnoticed. They reach a shallow tributary kept open by geothermal influence. One wolf tests the water, then the others follow in single file. Downstream, trumpeter swans drift through the slower current. They are the largest wild waterfowl in North America, and open water becomes critical when surrounding wetlands freeze. The wolves reach the far bank and shake violently, throwing water from their guard hairs before it can draw too much heat from the body. It climbs the white travertine terraces of Canary Spring, where hot water deposits dissolved calcium carbonate in pale steps. Above them, a bighorn sheep ram crosses the rock. Hard hoof rims grip narrow edges, while softer centers conform to uneven stone. 2 layers of bone above the ram's brain help absorb the impacts of head-to-head combat. But here, his greatest advantage is the slope itself. The wolves recognize the cost and turn away. Their route descends toward the Lamar River, where the food web changes from geothermal to aquatic. Native cutthroat trout hold position in the current, sensing pressure changes through the lateral line along their bodies. Some Yellowstone cutthroats have lived for up to 11 years, and they support otters, bears, and fish-eating birds. An osprey circles above, then folds its wings and strikes the surface. Nearby, a river otter passes through the shallows, closing its ears and nostrils underwater, while sensitive whiskers help locate prey. It can remain submerged for 2 to 3 minutes and swim at nearly 10 kilometers per hour. The wolves continue into a frost-covered sedge meadow. A sandhill crane releases a rattling alarm across the flats, and the elk herd responds at once. Elk make up between 89 and 96% of recorded winter prey for Yellowstone wolves. But dependence does not guarantee success. It makes every failed approach energetically expensive. On a volcanic scree slope, an American pika gives a metallic call and disappears beneath the basalt. It does not hibernate. Instead, it spends summer cutting, drying, and storing vegetation in hay piles below the rocks. A bald eagle watches from a dead pine, while ravens and coyotes remain attentive to the wolves below. Near the lower geyser basin, a grizzly bear tears into a rotting log in search of grubs and overwintering larvae. Its long front claws and enlarged shoulder muscles are better suited to digging than climbing, allowing it to open soil, roots, rotten timber, and rodent caches with repeated strokes. Behind the bear, a deep track fills slowly with bubbling grey mud. The print holds its shape for only a moment before rising water softens the edges and the geothermal ground begins to reclaim it. At midday, the air is warming. The wolves have crossed thermal crust, forest, river, meadow, and stone without committing to a chase. Around them, the food web is fully awake, but the same heat that kept water open before dawn is now increasing the cost of every kilometer. The morning hunting window is beginning to close. By noon, the wolves' greatest protection has become a liability. The coat that conserved heat before sunrise now slows its escape, while hours of travel have warmed the muscles beneath it. Across the exposed basin, cloud cover limits cooling, and geothermal energy continues to rise through silica crust, steaming runoff and mud pots. A grey wolf normally maintains a core temperature of about 37.8 to 39.2 degrees Celsius. Its resting respiration may be only 10 to 30 breaths per minute, but as body heat rises, the mouth opens and ventilation accelerates. Wolves have sweat glands in their paw pads, yet these cannot cool an endurance hunter. Most excess heat must leave through evaporation from the tongue and respiratory passages, a process that also consumes water. Continued movement would turn the pack's own metabolism against it. The wolves abandon the mineral flats and enter the lodgepole pine forest. Forest covers roughly 80% of Yellowstone, and lodgepole pine dominates most of that canopy. Its thin bark offers little protection from fire, but some cones remain sealed with resin until temperatures reach about 45 degrees Celsius. Once opened, they release seeds onto newly cleared ground. Beneath the canopy, the temperature falls. The wolves spread across the dry soil, pressing chests, bellies, and flanks against the cooler earth. Their panting gradually slows, though their ears continue to turn toward distant sounds. Beyond the trees, American bison remain exposed beside the steam. A mature bull may weigh about 900 kilograms, and such mass stores heat efficiently because relatively little surface area is available to release it. They stand nearly motionless, reducing the heat produced by muscle activity. On a shaded pile of volcanic rock, a yellow-bellied marmot remains close to a crevice. This rodent measures about 51 to 71 centimeters and can weigh up to 5 kilograms. Yet it may hibernate for 8 months and is normally most active in the cooler morning, late afternoon, and evening. At midday, the rocks become both lookout and refuge. A coyote reaches the same conclusion beneath an overhanging ledge. Weighing roughly 13 to 18 kilograms, it survives by feeding on rodents, rabbits, carrion, insects, and seasonal plant foods. But adaptability cannot cancel thermodynamics. Its mouth remains open as it pants in the shade, while the exposed ground beyond the ledge shimmers. At the edge of a mud pot, the story contracts to centimeters. Grey clay has dried into geometric fractures beside orange microbial growth. A thermal shore bug waits on black-stained geyserite as heat distorts the air. Nearby, gas gathers beneath viscous mud. A smooth dome rises, stretches, and collapses with a wet burst. From a distance, the basin appears still. At ground level, it is constantly rearranging itself. Water provides the only active corridor. Excelsior Geyser Crater releases about 15,140 liters of hot water each minute into the Firehole River. As the runoff enters the colder current, heat moves downstream and steam forms along the boundary. The river passes through several hydrothermal basins, linking boiling ground with cooler aquatic habitat. Here, a North American beaver continues working. It cuts a willow sapling with orange incisors whose enamel is strengthened by iron. Because the softer material behind the edge wears faster, the teeth remain naturally sharpened as they grow. The branch is dragged toward the dam, where it will slow the current, trap sediment, spread water across the floodplain, and raise the local water table. That engineering creates habitat for creatures far smaller than the beaver. A boreal chorus frog measures only about 2.5 to 3.8 centimeters, yet it can survive winter by tolerating partial freezing and entering dormancy while its heart stops. In warmer months, it breeds in shallow pools and attaches egg clusters to submerged vegetation, the kind of quiet habitat beaver wetlands provide. Even the beaver limits its surface movements. Once the branch is secured, it slips back toward deeper water and the protected entrance of its lodge. Across the caldera, bodies have surrendered their advantage. Wolves lie beneath the pines. Bison stand silent beside the steam. The marmot holds the rocks, and the coyote remains under stone. Only the landscape continues at full force. Excelsior pours into the firehole, white columns rise from vents, and acidic mud swells and bursts beneath drifting fog. The animals wait for the balance to shift, but the earth beneath them does not wait at all. As the heat begins to release its grip on the plateau, the silence beneath the lodgepole pines slowly changes. The distortion above the mineral flats thins, and cooler air begins to move through the forest. The first wolf rises before the others. Within moments, the pack is standing, shaking dust from its coats and stretching stiff limbs. The midday heat has passed, but the calories lost during the morning have not returned. The next movement must lead toward food. They leave the forest in a staggered line and spread across the sagebrush flats. A Uinta ground squirrel detects the vibrations and disappears below ground, but the wolves do not slow. Mule deer stand on a broken slope ahead. As soon as they detect the pack, they begin to stop, springing with all four hooves off the ground and landing stiff-legged. The display advertises alertness, balance, and control on rough terrain. A narrow tributary draws the pack toward a geothermal crossing. Hot water has carried dissolved silica through volcanic rock and deposited it as pale sinter, forming thin crusts, shallow shelves, and runoff channels. Steam moves sideways in the cooling wind, briefly revealing and hiding the route. In one channel, an old elk antler lies half submerged, while clear water slips around the bone and over a dark red microbial film. A small record of the herd's presence within a landscape that is constantly dissolving and rebuilding itself. Beyond it, American bison block the crossing. The wolves fan out and test the perimeter. They do not attack. They look for an old animal, a limp or a calf outside the adults. Instead, the herd closes ranks. Heavy heads turn outward and horns fill the gaps. There is no opportunity here. A small movement of the lead wolf's tail ends the test, and the pack turns away. The scent of elk reaches them near an aspen grove. Bodies drop close to the ground. The wolves use bleached thermal logs, sulfur-stained mounds, and folds in the mineral crust to break their outlines. The approach is not yet a chase, it is an examination. Long-term observations in northern Yellowstone show why. Wolf hunting success against elk has rarely exceeded 20% and falls below 10% when only adults are considered. Roughly half of recorded wolf-killed elk have been calves. Among 640 adult females killed by wolves, 89% were more than 10 years old. The pack is searching for vulnerability before risking contact. The herd continues feeding. Then the wind shifts. A cow raises her head and barks. The alarm passes through the grove immediately. Bodies turn, hooves strike the ground, and the elk surge away before the wolves close the final distance. The pack accelerates. Some drive forward while others angle toward the herd's edge, trying to force separation. More wolves do not automatically produce a better hunt. Some hang back because an elk can kick, trample, or drive an antler into a wolf at close range. Age also matters. Yellowstone's best-performing elk hunters are typically 2 to 3 years old. Older wolves may retain experience, but speed, acceleration, and the strength needed to pull down an animal several times their mass begin to decline. One elk starts to drift from the herd. The wolves narrow the gap. Hooves tear through wet soil, shattering a skin of silica. Paw prints overlap the elk trail, and mineral water jumps from shallow depressions. For a few seconds, the hunt becomes what the pack needs. One target, less protection, and open ground. But the ground ahead is not truly open. Superheated water is venting into cooler air. The vapor condenses into millions of droplets, building a dense white wall that wind pushes across the basin. The elk enters first and disappears. The wolves follow only to the edge. Beyond the steam, boiling runoff crosses an unstable crust, and hidden channels divide the surface. Their sightline is gone. Continuing at speed would mean placing each foot on ground they can no longer read. The pack stops. The wolves found the right prey, forced separation and closed the distance, yet Yellowstone changed the conditions before they could finish. Steam erased the target, volcanic water blocked the route. Survival depends as much on abandoning the wrong final step as on beginning the chase. The pack does not linger beside the basin. As the last light drains from the plateau, the air cools toward freezing and geothermal fog thickens across the mineral flats. Within minutes, the terrain that exposed the wolves during the chase begins to hide them again. They gather in a shallow, sandy depression beside a dormant vent. There is no carcass to divide and no immediate threat to confront, yet the pack becomes intensely social. Adults press their shoulders together, younger wolves approach with lowered bodies, and several exchange soft whines and quick licks around the muzzle. Wolves live mainly in family groups, and these ritualized contacts help restore coordination after separation, tension, or failure. Above them, a common raven circles through the mist. Ravens do not need to bring down an elk themselves. They track the animals that can. In Yellowstone, they may follow wolves during a hunt and often arrive almost immediately after a kill is opened. Surveys of the northern range have estimated roughly 200 to 300 ravens, with more than half recorded in wolf habitat away from developed areas. For the bird, the pack is a moving source of access to food hidden behind an ungulate's thick hide. The wolves leave the hollow and climb toward a volcanic ridge. Burned lodgepole trunks stand against the fading sky, remnants of earlier fires. Steam moves between them, and each exhalation from the climbing wolves briefly becomes visible before joining the fog. At the crest, the pack stops. One voice rises, then another, until separate calls merge into a layered chorus. A howl can advertise territory, locate separated family members, assemble the pack, or signal strength to neighboring wolves. Its harmonic overtones are detailed enough for wolves to distinguish familiar individuals at a distance. In Yellowstone's open country, a howl may carry as far as 16 kilometers. Even through forest, it can remain audible for about 10. The sound travels beyond the ridge, but the pack is already descending. Below lies a hot spring complex, whose colors remain visible after most of the land has darkened. Deep water reflects a muted cyan, while orange and yellow microbial mats spread across shallow runoff channels. Their arrangement is controlled by temperature, chemistry, and light. At ground level, the microbial plane is layered, fibrous and alive. Hot water threads between ridges only millimeters high. A hot spring fly clings at the boundary, where a small change in distance can mean a large change in temperature. The wolves emerge from the fog and move along the spring's safer outer edge. Their amber eyes gather what little light remains. Like other carnivores, they possess a tapetum lucidum, a reflective layer behind the retina that sends light through the photoreceptors a second time and improves vision in dim conditions. It cannot create light where none exists, but twilight, movement, scent, and hearing are enough to guide the pack. They stop shoulder to shoulder above the colored runoff. Behind them, the ridge has gone black. Beneath them, hot water continues to cross the ancient crust, feeding microbial communities that were here long before wolves, elk, or forests. The day's hunt has ended. The geological engine has not. The darkness fully claims the wilderness, but the earth continues to boil. As darkness settles across the geothermal plateau, the wolves disappear into the steam, leaving only their tracks pressed into cooling mud. Their day has been shaped by forces far older than the pack itself. Frozen rivers, volcanic stone, shifting winds, boiling water, and forests born from fire. Here, survival is never controlled by strength alone. Bison endure through mass and cooperation. Elk escape through vigilance and terrain. Ravens follow the hunters. Beavers reshape the waterways. And microscopic life occupies the narrow boundaries between heat and death. Together, they reveal the deeper truth of Yellowstone wildlife. Every species survives by reading the landscape and accepting its limits. Beneath them all, the geothermal system continues its endless work. Water descends, heats, rises, and returns to the surface as steam. Mineral crust forms, breaks, and forms again. Long after the hunt has ended, the ground remains alive. The wolves may rule the night for a moment, but the final authority belongs to the earth, breathing beneath the caldera, shaping every path, every choice, and every life above it. The darkness fully claims the caldera, but the wolves of Yellowstone have secured their territory for one more night. Yet, this boiling plateau is just one extreme of the American wilderness. 300 miles to the north, a different pack faces an entirely different monster, the crushing, silent, deep freeze of the Alaskan tundra. Click the video on your screen to witness how life survives the long dark.